Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time today. I know, Rima, during your presentation, you talked about the importance of making your relationships, prioritizing your relationships over everything else in homeschooling. And if you could take, or anybody, you can start and others can add to it. Can you share why that is important? Because before I started homeschooling, I heard that a lot. And I've been homeschooling for several years, and I absolutely agree, but my husband, he's like, doesn't understand. So I don't really know how to explain it to him, other than have him talk to other families, but I don't know, yeah. So maybe if you could kind of.
Oh no, you go ahead.
Okay. Okay. It's actually a really deep question. It's a great question. Why relationship first? Your relationship starts, and the theme through all of the talks, it starts with your relationship with God. And that relationship, as Hannah so wonderfully talked about it, has to come from a place of love. Because if it doesn't come, that relationship doesn't stem from love, then everything else is corrupted by whatever else is replaced by that. So if your relationship with God isn't from love, it usually stems from not loving yourself. That's the source of it. The source of it is that the way that you were taught to have that relationship with God came out of fire and brimstone, out of fear, out of you have to do something, otherwise you're in trouble. You're, whatever, that negative relationship. And this is really it comes from the Dr. Neufeld Hold On to Your Kids philosophies. If anyone has not read that book, get that book. It's that when you have that relationship as the parents, that with God, and then you're implementing that, or you're transferring that onto your children, whatever that source is, your heart, your state is the sieve with which you're filtering to your children. So internally, you have to find a place of how you're going to connect God to your kids. And what is that? That's relationship. So the curriculum and the teaching comes from that place. If you want to bring joy to your homeschool, you have to feel joy. You have to be joyful. You have to feel like this is your life's purpose. It's not coming to homeschooling through fear. And I just loved running away from verses 2. I think that is so key. That's also part of this. It's because it's all relational. And that it stems first and foremost with that connection to God. Okay, so now let's bring it down to your children and your family. So, as I mentioned before, right, the analogy of the tectonic plates, the relationship you have with your spouse sets the tone and the culture for your family. It sets the joy from which you're teaching, as Maria put it. It sets the love, as Hannah talked about. It sets self-esteem. It sets connection. It sets the tone for how you're moving forward with educating your children, not just academically, but spiritually, socially, emotionally, mentally, physically, everything. So if you and your husband are the tectonic plates that are not stable and aren't aligned and aren't in sync, then that impacts the children. And then when there's friction, our children are absorbing that. And I think, there's the little, now the term, the little T trauma and the big T trauma. So we're like traumatizing our kids slowly. They're destabilized. They don't have a sense of themselves because they're looking to you for stability, and there is none, right? If there isn't that cohesiveness. And then you're trying to teach and you're trying to educate on top of that instability. So oftentimes what I've seen over years and years of, co-founding Silicon Valley Muslim homeschoolers and talking to parents and talking to mothers and families, mothers will call me and talk to me and ask me questions about curriculum. And when you start to ask questions, I never, ever, ever discover the source is the curriculum of the problem is the curriculum. It's like 110% never the curriculum that's the issue. It's the relationship between the parents and the children that is the source of the issue. The attachment, the healthy attachment that we need to have with our kids in order for them to lean into you, to trust you, to lead them, to guide them, to teach them, that's what they need. That's the hold on to your kids, parents over peers, where they're looking to you. They're not looking outside. They're looking to you. And that relationship with parents, that's how you transfer our babies, our children who don't fully, they have fitra, but they don't fully understand the God relationship yet, right? You're transferring that attachment that they have to you over to God. And so you're moving that off of you to God, to the Prophet ﷺ, to the Quran. And unless you have that strong attachment and that relationship to them, we can't do that. We can't connect them back through love, through joy, through self-confidence, through self-assurance to God, for them to find their way. And then, of course, education and curriculum and learning and lessons, and however we all four of us do it very differently. So does that answer your question, like as far as why it's important?
Yeah, I think so. So basically what you're saying is that the huge significance in why it's important for the parent-child relationship is because they're not able to have that strong relationship with Allah unless they have that strong relationship with us, and then it gets transferred, that love gets transferred to Allah. So if it's shaken, then that will never happen. And
Yeah.
ultimately that's our goal.
100%. It's if you want to take away summary, the word is attachment. The word is attachment. So what are we taught in our faith? That we don't want to be attached to the dunya. We don't want to be attached to, to wealth. We don't want to be attached to our friends too much. We want our attachment to be solely to God, right? Solely to Allah. So attachment starts with how our children are connected to us. That's how we develop. They need to trust. They need to have confidence in us and trust in the parent. And that trust then evolves, and we transfer that to God, and we move that over to God. So that's the source waters of everything. And when they trust you, then you can lead them. You can take them by the hand and lead them to Waldorf, to completely customizing their education like Maria did, or unschooling, or classical approach like we did. Whatever it is that you resonate with, that brings joy to you, that you love to do, you can then move them towards that. But if there's friction, if they don't want to follow you and they're pushing back against you, you have to solve that relationship problem first.
Because you mentioned your husband, and I might not be a homeschooler in a few days because my husband is still stuck on sending my youngest back to school. So we've never been on the same page, and that's one of the reasons why it was so difficult to continue to homeschool, because we're always, not agreeing. And Sister Colleen, she told me about this concentric circles that she had learned at Dr. Ranya's class one day, and I actually put that over my head, like behind, my bed. And the concentric circles is, the first circle is Allah, and then the one around it is you, and then it's your husband, and then it's your kids, and so forth and so on. Well, in the beginning, it was like strangers. It wasn't even like my parents and siblings. And then it was like I was the last one. And so then eventually I worked on myself and my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which helped a lot. And then I skipped my husband because that was really hard. So, and what I learned from the concentric circles is if you skip any ring, there's no khair or barakah in what you're doing. And so by skipping my husband, it was always a big challenge because it wasn't working still. And I always wanted my husband to be like, really close to the kids, and not realizing how controlling I was because I had my mind set, on an outcome, and that wasn't, that wasn't what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted for me. And I was always arguing with him and fighting him and disagreeing. And it got to the point where I called his bluff and I thought he wasn't going to do it. And I always said, just send him to school. So what? Because he would never do it. But guess what? He did it one day, years ago, sent them back to school. And it was like the end of the world for me. But in a sense, it humbled me because he took charge, and that's all I ever wanted him to do. And he didn't do it in the way I would have wanted him. I mean, I didn't want him to do it at all, but But it was like humbling for my son. My son made some mistakes when he was in school, but he would have forevermore tell me, you should have, and he did for a few years until he came back. And then he was like, because I told him, I said, Baba, I call him Grandpa, like, you did go to school, but what did you get out of it? Like at least I had that to, go back to, and then eventually he stopped. But imagine if he hadn't went that 1 year to high school and my little one in junior high. And then, so what that taught me was to, one, work on my relationship with my husband. The more I worked on my relationship with my husband, the more my kids' relationship with his sons. These were boys that he was probably, because, Allah knows best, my controlling habits and other reasons, he was neglecting. And I wanted him to my kids to have a great relationship with their father, and they weren't. But the moment I worked on my relationship with my husband, all of a sudden, not in their young years, but as teenagers, when they really need their father, they're friends and they're close. So I always go back to the concentric circle, and it's so hard because I'm still working on my marriage, but that's what you need. You cannot skip any rings. You have to go back to that. And sometimes when I'm butting heads with my husband, I go back to myself. Because I'm like, yeah, I know that, he's being really difficult, but there's something in me too that I need to work on for me to not be so focused on that outcome, or, make dua, try to see it from a different angle. And then it just almost, the problem just goes away and we're okay again. So I don't know if that was helpful, but did you want me to read all the questions? Because I feel like some of the questions were answered. Yeah? So let me just go here real quick. So I really like this question. How did you help your child develop good character? What kind of challenges did you create for your child to help them improve, build certain character traits? What opportunities did you create for your children to have good role models around them? So, how did you help your child develop good character? What kind of challenges did you create for your child to help them improve / build certain character traits? What opportunities did you create for your children to have good role models around them?
Oh, we're going under the assumption my children have good character traits. No, they do. They have to do that. They do. I think it starts, as always, with your relationship with Allah and how your children's, because children model what they see, and how you in your family interact with each other? You know, are you and your husband, you know, do you greet each other with salams when you see each other? You know, do you show respect for each other? You know, do you speak kindly and considerately? You know, how do you interact with your parents? How do you interact with your husband's parents and his family? How do you interact with your neighbors? If you are modeling good character, you know, your own good character, your children see that, you know. And also too, I think that, you know, how you correct your children makes a big difference. And I think that this is where, you know, you've got that sort of, how can I put this nicely? This is a time when I think you want to be very gentle with your kids. This is not a time to shame your children and say, you know, oh, you know, why did you speak to that or whatever, to be harsh. This is one when we look at the Prophet ﷺ and how he would correct people. He corrected people with love and kindness. He didn't criticize them. You know, there's the example everyone uses about the Bedouin who came in and urinated in the masjid, and the Sahaba all were like, oh no, and they wanted to beat this guy. And the Prophet ﷺ, he was like, just let him finish. Let him finish what he's doing, and then, you know, pour some water over it. And then the Prophet ﷺ took the man aside, and he, you know, gently told him. He said, you know, this is not something we pray in here. No, this is not something, you know, we do not urinate in here. And we see that throughout the seerah. And that, by the way, is your best tool, is your children seeing you and how you interact, you and your husband, and Sirah, as Layla said, because these are, you know, the Prophet ﷺ is the best of humankind, and in the Sirah we will see every situation come up, and we will see how the Prophet ﷺ, how he acted, how the Sahaba acted with each other, and then of course make sure that their friends are also people of good character. And if they're not, that's also an opportunity to very kindly, without taking it too far, pointing out, you know, oh, did you see what Johnny did? You know, what do you think about what Johnny did? You know, is it okay? How would you react? So you can point those things out, but to do it kindly and do it gently. Building character is not a overnight thing. It's something we all have to work on our whole lives. You know, none of us are immune to bad behavior and, you know, a little backsliding. And so we have to, you know, kind of keep our intentions as well. But just surround them with examples of good character.
As my children are, as your children are older too, so now the character building is a little bit different. And one thing that my children and I like to talk about is temperaments. I love the science and the art of temperaments, and I realize that some of like my children's best qualities are innate, but with those beautiful qualities, I'll take one of them, integrity. One of my sons has integrity like, mashallah, so much. And I said, you have more integrity than I do. I said, but with your integrity comes arrogance. So you have this beautiful integrity, and now you have like this, every beautiful trait also has a challenge. And so as young adults, our conversations are really exciting when it comes to these kinds of things. And the teaching is in the most unlikely of moments. I was driving my daughter, I can't remember, somewhere, and I said, and it was a house where I sort of knew the family but not well. And so I said, is the father home? And she said, yes. And I said, when you're with your friend, you stay with, like if your friend has to leave the room, leave with her. And or if you are in the room, in like her bedroom, then no men should be in there. Just really simple things, these first lessons of protection, not just for my daughter, but protection for the men in the family as well. Same in my house, if there is a girl who's visiting, there are certain rules not just to protect the girl, but to protect the boys, the women and the men. And so it was this moment where it's like, in the moment, this is maybe it's not exactly character building, but it's these little lessons that have to happen when the situation arises so that the context is correct. And it's not for shaming, and it's not for guilting, and it's for, you know, reminders and protection. She was going someplace, and she has a phone, she's 14, and we put Apple Pay on it. And I said, she had been to this cafe with a friend and she had gotten something to drink and her friend didn't. And I said, you need to offer, like you need to pay for her. Oh, like I didn't know. It's like, if you go up to the counter and you buy something for her. And this happened twice where she was awkward and didn't know. And she was with like a cousin of hers and the cousin came back. We were at like, an outdoor mall and she was carrying a drink and the cousin's like, no, it was expensive. I'm like, go back and like buy her a drink. Like, so these are little things, like they're little adabs that occur in the moment. Again, they're teaching moments because they will make mistakes, and we will, as adults, oh my goodness, like I hope no one counts as many mistakes I've made socially, awkwardness and whatnot. But these are so it's not exactly character building exactly, but it is the character that you would hope that you have for your children, because it will be a representation of your family values. In our family, feeding people is a really big deal. They come to our house, we're going to just, we're going to feed them. And for my parents, it was like, we're going to give them tea. Maybe it won't be a big old spread. Whatever it is, those are traits that I want my children to have because they're of values for me. So you choose the things that are important for you. Every family will have a different, a different flavor, but it's very exciting to be talking about this with your older children. And like Maria said, and like what you have heard over and again, it's the Sira stories that are going to be those examples of character, and they are going to be you. Here's why. When your children are 0 to 7, they imitate you. And that's the time when you know if you've said a bad word that you don't realize, because your child is going to say that bad word. We see funny videos on TikTok about this all the time. And if you have a huff and a puff and this kind of behavior, your child, so that is an opportunity for you to correct your behavior. 7 to 14, they mimic your emotional state. And if you do not rein in and understand how to deal with that, your children are certainly going to be your example in that moment. They're going to be your teacher. Here's the most exciting part. When they hit puberty, they are
Just say it.
they call out your hypocrisy. Okay. They are so good at what you have done all your life for a facade. They are laser and they can point it out. So in all of those opportunities, we think that we're building character in our children. We are actually building ourselves.
Oh, I love that.
And this is just to tie to what everyone has said. You cannot read Sira too much as a family and as an individual. Okay, to quote Sheikh Mikhail Smith, you need to do a khatam of Sira every year. Not because the Sira changes, but because we change. And every time you read it, you will get something different, and your children, as they go through their different stages, they will get something different. Sira, Sira, Sira.
So I have young children still. My oldest is 15 and my youngest is just turned 11 in May. And my youngest particularly, especially when they were little, they do what you do, not what you say. And so it is about modeling what you want them to become. And this is a very small example. We are a culture, in our culture, I don't know what's happening in the Muslim community, I'm not sure, but we're losing our basic adab, just the basics. So something that's very important to me is when we go somewhere, whether it's the co-op or whether it's a park day or whatever it is, my children must greet the elders. They must greet the moms, and it's just no big deal. To me, it's not even something I thought about. But recently, a couple of the moms in the co-op we were talking about, okay, what are our tenets for the year? What are we going to teach our kids? What's the focus? And they brought this up. They said, when your kids come to the co-op, they greet the moms. They say salams to everybody, and we want our kids to do that. And it just was, it really kind of rocked my world. I don't know what's happening, but we have to start there. We really have to start at the basics. When you're hosting people at your home, involve your children in how to how to host, how to be a good friend, how to be a good host, and model that for them. But it's not just about modeling, it's about bringing attention to things that you want your kids to do and become. So especially when they're little, that it's really important to do that. When kids come over to our home, hosting is also something really important to us. And so my I've just taught him basic knife skills. And so if I'm not around, he knows how to cut some apples and grab some crackers for his friend or neighbor that comes over, right? So this is his way of practicing what we model. And the same goes for language and the language that we're speaking. When I'm really mad and angry and frustrated, I try to use really big words to explain my emotions. This is not acceptable in our family. We use words that we don't go to our baseline when we're trying to explain something or when we're frustrated. So we want our language, the language we use in our home, to express emotion. For example, anger is an okay emotion in our household. It's okay, it's healthy. But you're not violent, you don't use inappropriate language, you express your frustration in a way that communicates how you're feeling with adab. So I think that is something we have to bring back. We've got, for example, something that Shaheen has talked about on our Telegram group and whatnot is dressing, and how we bring our kids, girls don't so much have this issue, but how we bring our boys, because I have two boys and I'm cognizant of this, how we bring our boys to Jummah, right? Like low jeans and a too short t-shirt for boys is not okay at Jummah. And so how are we showing up? And my kids get teased about how they dress all the time. They like my 15-year-old gets, oh, why are you wearing a suit when it's just pants and a denim jacket? It's not a big deal. Right, so that is a value system, a core value system, that we dress properly when we go to Jummah, and so on and so forth. So these are just a few examples of how you're impressing your own value system onto your kids.
Are we going to have her?
We have a question.
Okay. Assalamualaikum. Oh, sorry. So I just had a quick question, which is kind of related to what all of you have said. And first of all, thank you for all your time and knowledge. It's been so beneficial. I was wondering, like in your own experiences with your children, how you've navigated friendships. Because I know, like, one of the reasons, like, a lot of people, the theme has been also protecting our children and making sure their deen is strong and their values and all that. And I know you can only keep them in a bubble for so long. But, like, even I had a homeschool friend who told me she would send her kids to Sunday school for socialization. But it turned out that the Sunday school, ironically, the kids there were actually having a very negative influence on that child. And so, like, in fear of ever feeling arrogant or judgmental, like that you want to judge anyone's family or kids, but at the same time know that do you address it by making a teachable moment and say, their family has different values, or do you guard them from those people? Like, how do you navigate that, or what have you guys done in your experience?
Is it okay if I start with this one? Sure. So this is a really big one for our family right now. I have a 15-year-old, I have a teenager, so and with my younger son too. It's a really, really good question. So I think when we talk about socialization, we have to define it, and we have to understand there's good socialization and there's bad socialization. And I've always said to my kids, quality over quantity. Quality over quantity. So we want our kids to be well socialized, but that doesn't mean that we're going to put them in circumstances and situations that are going to undo what we've been working on so hard, blood, sweat, tears, and sacrifice, right? Partly why many of us don't send our kids to 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 brick and mortar traditional schools is to protect them from the bad socialization aspects. And we had a situation in our Sunday school, the example that you gave, where that was a challenge. And I think you have to look at what's age appropriate. My younger son in those elementary school years, at least from my perspective, you want to shelter and protect them as much as possible and put them in good company, in good sohbah. This is part of our tradition. And there's studies show this now too, you are the compilation of the top 5 people that you spend time with. So the 5 people you spend the most time with, you are a combination of those people. So that's how we've taught our children, where choose your friends wisely. And it's not about judgment, it's about boundaries. This is a boundary for our family. This is a boundary for you, for my younger son or my older son, and the boundaries are different. But we have to really understand what our value system is and what we want to teach our kid, and what are our limitations and boundaries, and teach them those boundaries and allow them to socialize within those boundaries. It's different for my 14 or my now a newly almost 15-year-old. He has more sense than an 11-year-old. So he can be around certain things and not allow that to influence him. My younger son, that he's not ready for that right now. So it's perfectly okay for you to say, Sunday school's not really for me. It's not really great for my elementary school kid, but it might be okay for my teenager who understands how to filter a little bit more. Does that make sense? Yeah.
In certain circumstances, though, you can't avoid. Just in certain circumstances, like if you go to the mosque, or if you are I'm not part of a co-op, so I'm just not, trying to pick on anyone. But if you were in a co-op and there were other kids that, like in certain situations that you're already part of, and they see certain friends at Jummah or at the mosque, like that you run into, at that point, do you just like have a talk with your child and say, that's how they, I don't know, like do you have a one-on-one with them in those?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we have a rhythm, right? I talked about rhythms and routines, right? So we have a routine and a rhythm in the car on our way to whatever it is we're doing, whether it's a field trip or the mosque or a friend's house. We go over our values, our rules. So when you go to someone's house, and this is a conversation we're having, like from when they're very little, when you're going to a field trip, you thank the docent, you take out what you take in, you don't leave trash, you're kind to all the organizers, and you thank everybody. And we're reminding them of this all the time. Now, if we see behavior that is opposite to that, we talk about it on the way home. Like, how did it go today? What did you think? What went well? What didn't go so well? What do you think about what made you uncomfortable? And so we're not picking on a particular child, but they're coming to their own conclusion, and you're asking leading questions to get them to that place. And that goes for everything. When we have a variety of a range of families that we spend time with, and different value systems in those families. So on our way there, we're establishing our values, and on our way back, we're talking about, what went well and what didn't go so well, and why that fits with our family and why it doesn't. So I think that's in any case, in any situation, helpful.
I wanted to ask you, originally when you asked your question, you also said your relationship with your children. Was that part of your question, or was it just mainly who they're socializing with?
The second part, socializing.
Not
not relationship.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, though.
Great.
I'm going to pass it to her. Is that okay?
Assalamu alaikum. I've learned so much from all of you today. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. May Allah bless you all. I have a question for Sister Maria. I set my intention to include more joy and wonder in my homeschool this year, and I come from a very academically rigorous curriculum background, but I really connected to just the palpable joy that you were mentioning, bringing that into your homeschool, and all you need is a kitchen and a library. And I'm trying to wrap my mind around it. So can you give me some examples of like how you would plan out your typical week, and what does your typical day look like, and what subjects do you decide to cover? How does that play out in an actual day? I'd just love to hear from you.
Well, keep in mind that my youngest is now 27 years old, so it's been a while.
That's okay.
But I think we really liked, what they call, like, for example, unit studies or connected learning. Like, for example, and this is something I've used this example so many times because it's so good. How old are your kids?
I have an almost 15-year-old and a 12-and-a-half-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Do you know how to bake bread?
Yes.
Okay. Think about bread. All right. You are going to cover every subject you're going to ever need to cover making bread. Because you've got the obvious. You've got time, temperature, measurement, all of that stuff. You've got, the yeast, you've got the whole science of it. But also, especially for the older ones, bread is very political, and we were just talking about that in the hallway. Think about all the revolutions in the world that have started over bread. Just recently in Egypt, when the government tried to take away the food subsidy for bread, people were rioting because, Egyptians get most of their calories from bread, and all of a sudden, you're telling people they can't afford their main source of calories. You've got the science of it. Where does wheat grow? How is climate change affecting wheat? What's going to happen when we can't grow wheat in the places we're used to growing it? You've got just an endless amount of material that you can cover from something just simply as making bread. And then also, too, when your husband comes home from work, you got something really yummy to share. But, those are the kind of things that give your kids the knowledge that they need on a wide range of subjects that are interesting, that they can get into themselves with you as a guide, not necessarily as a lecturer, and they will stick in their head because they will connect it all together. You can also pick other things too, but when they get to that age, especially, with the little ones, you're going to focus more on other things. But, even gardening, if you have space for a garden, and once again, you can get into the politics of it. Look what's happening right now with farm subsidies. For your older one in particular, they can do a deep dive on the history of farm subsidies. Look what's happening with the tariffs. Look what's happening with so many farm workers being removed violently. You've got just a huge range just by tying things together. And also, too, following, if your kid has a particular interest, and I like to do things together with the kids as much as I could. It saved a lot on me, and it was also fun for them, too. You have different expectations based on different, age levels and abilities, but you can do a lot together. It saves time, it saves resources, it gives them a feeling of camaraderie and being together. My mentor, my homeschooling mentor, I'm still in contact with her. We're very good friends. She was the product of a one-room schoolhouse in Northern California, where most of her classmates were her cousins and siblings. So homeschooling came naturally to her. And with her 5 kids, homeschooling them, like doing a lot of projects together where everyone worked at their own level but on the same project, made it a lot easier and made it more fun. And you can bring in, if you've got one kid who's really interested. I helped a sister once design a home study, unit study on salmon, because her kids just really were interested in salmon. And it was so much, I have a big voice anyway. I have so much fun just going in, and the kids had fun. And so that is the kind of thing I think you can do. And people will sometimes say, oh, that doesn't sound very rigorous. But let me tell you, it can be plenty rigorous. It's the standards you set for what you want the kids to come out of that. How deep can the research go? And it can go very, very deep. And you can contact people. Have your 15-year-old write letters to people at the universities who are involved in some of these subjects. Reach out to people, in all different of these fields, and they will almost always write you back. So those are just some ideas when you're talking about ways to engage your kids but still get that depth of learning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sure.
That was a great starting point.
Assalamu alaikum. I just want to say Jazakallah khair for today. Alhamdulillah, it's blessed me with so much knowledge. Alhamdulillah. I actually, first year of homeschooling, I'm starting now. And I was doing a lot of istikhara through the summer, and then this popped up. And I was like, you know how you're saying, it's a guiding light, subhanAllah. And so one of the biggest questions, and I've been hearing it throughout, is temperament and fitra. Are they the same? No. So I'd like a proper definition for both of those. And then how do we go about identifying that in a child?
So I'll talk about the temperaments because I love it so much. And also a children's temperament is kind of like an ill-fitting jacket. And when they reach puberty, that's when their temperament actually descends and becomes a part of them, but it's different than when they are children, because the same way a toddler's mode of learning is a kinesthetic way of learning where they're climbing and they're breaking and exploring, the overarching temperament of children is sanguine. So it's more like lighthearted and flitting from this to another and joyful and curious. And so generally, childhood is painted this way, even if there is another temperament that's actually underneath it. And then when they hit puberty, and we see this all the time, oh, my 9-year-old was so like happy and now she's hit puberty and she's so self-conscious. Well, there is a temperament change at that time, and there's also not just a temperament change, but childhood to adulthood is a rough, what do you call those? Transition. That milestone is very difficult for them. So your temperament for children is going to be different than the temperament that they have as adults. The other thing is that with temperament, and this is really beautiful, if you didn't know this, the Prophet ﷺ is the most perfect balance of all the temperaments. So, but here's the most beautiful thing about it. If you don't know about the temperaments, there are 4, it's arguable, but there are roughly 4. Choleric, you can imagine, it's the kind of hot-tempered leader, has a lot of good qualities, has some things to work on. The melancholic tends to feel deeply and a deep thinker and meticulous and fastidious. The phlegmatic is the slow and steady, and she'll get there in the end, and she's loyal. And the sanguine is that happy-go-lucky, very charismatic, even very beautiful, and in that moment she is your best friend, and then 10 minutes later she's someone else's best friend. You're like, what happened? What did I do? So roughly these 4 temperaments. Okay, this is the most beautiful part. When I have studied the seerah, I see the aspects of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that are my temperament, and I feel close. I'm like, oh, he's phlegmatic. He's just like me. And then you hear someone else, oh, he's sanguine. Because look at the way he communicated with people and that smile. So this is the most beautiful thing about learning about the Prophet ﷺ is that the temperament that you are, you will see that in him, and it will make you close to him. So there are the 4 temperaments. The beautiful thing about temperaments is the way that you're seeking harmony and balance between the 4. There are some things about each of the temperaments that are a little bit rough. And the best way to smooth those things out is to put like with like. So you put your same temperament with someone who is like you. So in a classroom, in a Waldorf setting, you need a big enough classroom to do this. You put all the cholerics together, you put all the sanguines together, and they will soften each other out. Because the negative qualities in a sanguine, you have to be able to see it. You don't put a sanguine who's like the happy-go-lucky with the melancholic. They're not going to help each other grow. So I told my son, because he's now 23 and he's asking these questions, and I said, so if you marry someone who is your same temperament, you will be able to grow to an extent in that temperament that you have, because you will be able to polish out those rough edges. But you may have like this glass ceiling. You may not be able to progress more because you won't be able to see these other temperaments until you have children, and then you're exposed to all of them. So that was kind of like an interesting thing. Now, fitra is different. Oh, by the way, you are born with your own temperament. It's not like a nurture nature thing. It's just Allah has gifted you with something, and it is our test to find balance in this. Your fitra is beautiful. Allah created you in good. And again, if you look at, say, I speak about Christianity a little bit because of my mom's background, but the idea is that, and not just in Christianity, but in Judaism, you are created almost in sin. You're created like broken, or you're created having to atone. This is not the Islamic way. We are created beautiful. We are created seeking beauty, seeking correctness. That's why people who say you don't need religion because you'll have an internal moral compass, you do to an extent. We are naturally inclined to a lot of goodness, but we absolutely need a religion to standardize that morality. So your child is naturally good, naturally inclined to doing right. However, there are milestones, like a 5-year-old will lie and not know that it is bad, and won't even hide it because they won't know it. So then knowing about that development will help you understand that these things need to be taught and explained, and maybe it's just a phase, but the difference between, they're very different. They're two different things that are in some ways completely unrelated, but in understanding both of them, we can have a deeper understanding of how we can help our children and how much is already in them. And we are simply here, not just to guide them, but as they become adults, to warn them the same way that the Prophet ﷺ was here, was as a guide, and the Quran is as a guide, and he is here to warn. Same with us, with our children.
Jazakallah khair. I have another question, if that's okay. So, so far we spoke about homeschooling, but there was nothing about how you would homeschool for special needs. So is there any resources out there for dyslexic, ADHD? Do we have anything?
It's a great question. So if you want to go deep on temperament, the 2 books that I mentioned in my talk, The Temperament God Gave You and The Temperament God Gave Your Kids, they're 2 books written by a Christian, but it's very applicable. Really great book if you want to go deep on it. The Silicon Valley Muslim Homeschoolers has a tangential Telegram group, I think, that supports. There's a mom who supports children with special needs, and so if anyone would like to join that group, I would be happy to add you. I'll get you in touch with the person who can add you and support in that way. And I know she does a lot of. This mom is incredible, and she does a lot of really great work in our community.
Last question, guys. We gotta wrap up.
Jazakallah khair for all of you guys. So my question is, right now, actually, my daughter used to go to Granada. So she has, this is the first year she is going for the homeschooling. And she actually used to go from 8 to 3:30, and there is no gadget, nothing over there. Now, actually, a little bit leery from her part too, because she is finishing everything in time and everything. Then what to do next, right? How many times I will take her outside and all 24/7? How come I can keep an eye on her? Because right now the gadgets are so many. Even teachers are also recommending some YouTube videos and everything, the different resources. And after doing that, so much distraction is there, and she's going to different sites and everything. How much we can control, how we can overcome this issue. And still we are working on it and overcame so many things. But how much time you can spend, at home only one kid is there. Even the other kids are playing on Zoom and everything. They are going with different games, and so many bad things are happening over there too. So how you overcome this issue? How you address that?
Your generation. I don't know if I have a good answer. I think you're going.
Oh boy. Okay. So is your question
regarding to that
digital
technology? So much
technology. Okay. I mean, we could spend an hour talking about that. It's a really big topic. It's a very complex topic.
Or even if you can actually tell that how you, the same actually question she was asking to the sister, that how you do the, structure your studies and everything, you cannot doing from 8 to 3:30, but how you go and divide it during the day so we can give her more time.
Okay, so if you're talking specifically about digital wellness, the first thing you have to do is have you've got to have technology to manage the technology. So sitting on top of your router at home there are different things that different companies make. There's one we use called Eero, and what that does is it allows you to manage from your phone what devices are accessible on Wi-Fi and can access the internet and what cannot. So it's like if you have it completely open and you do not have any kind of system to manage the devices at home, it's like giving your children a loaded gun. You are giving your child access to the internet without filter, and you just need to turn around for 5 seconds and they have their phone hidden in a bathroom under the blanket and they're accessing things that they should not be, and it's incredibly dangerous. It is like a drug. It is like giving them a loaded gun. So first and foremost, every single person in this room, whether you're homeschooling or not, has to get internet Wi-Fi controls on every single device in the house. We're talking Google Home, Alexa, iPhones, iPads, your computer, your child's computer. Every single device has to be able to be controlled from your phone. And then when you have that set up, there has to be there has to be an understanding of rules around technology use in the home. So you have to decide for your family what works. Maybe they get an iPad 1 hour a day. Maybe they get nothing during the week, and it's like dessert. It's like a fun thing they get to do once a week. But you have to understand your own relationship with technology and how much you want to give your children. The younger they are, you want the least amount of technology in your homeschool as possible in the elementary school years. You want to keep them off devices, computers. You want to keep them off as much as possible. We have a lot of people do Quran classes online. That's fine. There are certain things, sure, where you can't access certain types of learning, the Quran teachers in Egypt, and so you need to do that. But you want to really understand the dangers of devices and technology in your home, just as a family, whether you homeschool or not, and how to manage that and how to control that and make sure that you are always in control of every single device in your home. So I would start there. As far as what's going on with your daughter and transitioning out of brick and mortar to home and what to do with that time, I think that's definitely a deeper discussion. But holistically, we want to make sure that we are giving our children access to technology in a way that is age appropriate for them. And definitely you want to minimize that under 14 or 15 years old. For sure. Like no child under 15 or 14 or 13 should have their own phone. And my child we have a family phone that goes with the child if they are, out of the home away from us, but they don't have a phone particularly. So, you have to understand the dangers of it and then implement safeguards around technology use in the home.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up. Jazakallah khair for all our speakers and all the wisdom that you've shared with us. And we really hope that it's been beneficial to all of you. Jazakallah khair for everyone who joined us here and also on the live stream. And we are planning to make this an annual thing, and inshallah it'll be even bigger. I can't say better, but definitely bigger. Inshallah. And Jazakallah khair again for being here. Yeah.